Good evening. Welcome to Investigator News, and this is a World War III report. And tonight I'm going to start off with Karen tipped me off to this afternoon. She might have to tell me if there was an ending to this. There was a shooter in Pittsburgh, and what concerned everybody is the guns and the ammunition he had.
It's ongoing.
It's still ongoing? Okay. And I told William about it this afternoon, and also Karen gave me the report, and I went and watched all the reports on it. And this guy was being evicted on a warrant, and he started shooting. And as of the first 2 hours, over 100 rounds were shot. The local police backed off, the sheriff's department did, and SWAT team had moved in with the bigger guns and heavier body armor or body. Yeah.
What happened was this was a civil issue, and a constable was sent out. Now the sheriffs have unarmed constables, right? And then they had a backup, a regular sheriffs that are armed in a standby position. So this guy doesn't want to be homeless for whatever reason. He's being either evicted by the bank or by because of unpaid taxes or whatever it is. Whoever owns his home and he hasn't paid his payments, then they have the right to evict him.
Yeah.
Or perhaps he's squatting. We don't know. But it's a civil issue. This isn't a criminal issue, right?
No, or felony. Well, it could be a felony.
Until he decided he wasn't going to be evicted.
Felony would be because he's using the guns he's using. And
right.
We talked about the big guns. The big guns, because I might give you a chance to explain what these are. Now I'm thinking an AK or an AR-15 is probably what he's using for multiple rounds. And they were saying that these were big bullets.
So there's 7.62, which are basically a 30-06-ish or a 30-30 round. And 223 probably an AR-15, something like that. So he's using semi-automatic weapons with high velocity rounds. So these are semi-automatic rifles. They're the same thing as if you had a 30-06 semi-automatic 30-06 or a 308 or there's 100 calibers, 6mm. So,
yeah, and Karen was telling me what's the
stop. So body armor doesn't stop these bullets.
No, and there was officers that were hurt, and they weren't. Nobody's been killed so far that I know.
No officers been shot so far, but there have been officers injured by flying glass. When these bullets hit something, all right, they fragment, all right, because these are super high velocity. If they don't ricochet, then they'll fragment. And these injured, but no officers shot so far.
Karen said 5 minutes. They're doing weather short news on the shooting. I'm not sure what that means. So, now Karen was asking me about the bullets, and I told her that you mentioned a 30-30, William, and a 30-30 is
Right.
what a lot of hunters use.
These are hunting rifles, okay? They're semi-automatic hunting rifles. It doesn't matter whether they look like an assault rifle or not. Okay, the rounds are semi-automatic. They're being shot one bullet at a time, and these are hunting rifles.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they are.
And Karen, so I told Karen, I said, and she was kind of, me and her were kind of discussing this, and I brought up a bear, because you go hunting for deer and you run into mama bear, you only have seconds to respond. And I told her 4 feet's too close. And with their claws and their weight, you have to have some.
4 feet with the bear, you better have a 44 Magnum and be okay with being both bitten and scraped up by nails, because that bear's not going to stop reacting before he attacks you, even if you kill him.
And that's seconds. That's why I was telling her that you said even if you kill them. I said, because if you just nick them, that just makes them more mad. And if it's their cubs, they're really going to come after you. That's why you need the one bullet that will drop them. And so now we have this shooter that's got one of these guns that could drop an officer in one shot. And now, at 1 o'clock this afternoon, they were saying that he was picking off officers, so they had to move into to where they could do the same. And they said they brought in the long guns with the scopes. And so me and William talked this over, and it's only fair game. You can't have a little handgun.
So AK-47s and AR-15s are not long rifles. Okay, they're shorter barreled rifles. You have to be a certain length to be a rifle, but they're shorter barreled for bush hunting in a heavy bush area, because you can't swing a long barrel around in a bushy area. So that's what AKs and AR-15s are designed for. They're really good for hunting like boars and a wild pig and deer in the bush. But when you bring in long guns, now you're able to shoot out like they do out west.
You sure are.
At 100 yards, not just close in, but out a long way, so you can get a really accurate shot. And you can use long rifles, right, for sniper rifles.
Now, the other thing is the Wagner group. Yevgeny is the boss of the Wagner group, and there was a plane crash. And
it wasn't just the leader,
right?
Was Yevgeny Prigozhin? It wasn't just him, but it was also his lieutenants. So
yes,
Wagner is in Ukraine, or was.
They were in Africa too.
Now they're in Belarus, right?
Right.
But they're also just outside of Niger too.
Nigeria, yeah. And they were boasting. William, get this, they were boasting they were gaining control in Niger. And then he was flying back because of Belarus. And now they said there was no mechanical failure on the plane. So they're looking at that this plane has been shot down. So I'm going to let you go with that.
So all these guys became a threat to Vladimir Putin when they went from southern Russia and started between the two groups because he didn't want civil war on his border. And Putin rightly said, yeah, let them go. Let them go to Belarus as long as they leave the country and no longer threaten Russia. But these are also corporate killers for Russia, right?
Yes, mercenaries, yes.
They're a corporation based in Moscow. And they contract out in a number of countries. Syria, just outside of Niger, I forget the country, it's just north of Niger, and also were involved in, I think it was Bakhmut. So these leaders got together, all right, and they were traveling on this aircraft. So likely the FSB or somebody like that, that plane was likely had a bomb on it. And then the story would come out that, well, they were shot down. Likely it was set up so once they got to a certain altitude, comply.
Mm-hmm.
So it was probably a barometric bomb or a barometric trigger. That's what I would do. Okay, if I had the problem with Wagner and I was in control, that's what William would do. That's what evil William would do, and I'm certain that's what Putin did.
Yeah,
it's the right thing to do. There are things worse than death. All right, civil war is a thing worse than death.
mm-hmm.
Torture is a thing worse than death. There are people who are more dangerous than death out there in the world. Osama bin Laden, the head of ISIS. These are people that if let get out of control will create so much death around them that it's warranted to take their lives.
Right.
All right. And Yevgeny Prigozhin is one of those people. Now, if Putin didn't take him out, right, then the CIA, it would be warranted for the CIA to take him out.
Right, and not only that, but within, not only that, but MI6, because everybody keeps forgetting, William, about MI6 over there too.
If they're trying to do a deal with Niger. These are dangerous, dangerous people. So the fact that that plane came down is not a surprise to anybody that knows anything about war. This is just something that happens. Underling leaders become too powerful, they need to be set aside. And if it's too unpopular to send them to the gulag, then them having a group accident is the best way to go.
Yeah. And then we got
and you have plausible deniability, right? They're in a third country. They're not on Russian aircraft. They're not on American aircraft. So it's good all around. And Prigozhin should have known that. He should have never allowed himself to be in a location with his lieutenants and outside of his own security guards. He allowed himself to be killed by getting on that aircraft.
Yeah, and then we if you look over at Iran, we gave Iran that money for the hostages, and they said it could be months, 3 to 6 months before we even get the hostages back. And then today we find out an Iran clash of over Hormuz, the Straits of Hormuz.
The Strait of Hormuz.
Okay,
right.
And you got more of the article on it than I did, so I'll let you go on that.
So what's happening is Iran's been using their fast boats and their frigates to threaten international shipping into Iranian waters in the Strait of Hormuz. Then once they're in Iranian waters, then they either board them, take their cargo, impound their ships.
Yep.
give them grief, whatever it is that they're doing, right?
And what they did is the American ship they were after hurried through and went and unloaded the oil into Texas, a Texas port, before Iran could grab
our
it.
Our partners in the region, the same partners, our partners that are down there talking at BRICS, right? That they want to be part of BRICS as well. When things go bad, they call the United States. So
always. And
it's freedom of navigation. It's a freedom of navigation issue, and the United States, it's long-standing U.S. policy that the Strait of Hormuz, the Malaccan Strait, the Panama Canal, the Strait of Gibraltar, the Suez Canal, U.S. servicemen are willing to give up their lives in all those places at any time. It is a given. It is basic national policy because we have trading partners that transit all those areas.
Yeah.
Japan, Korea, Taiwan, the Philippines, I guess even Singapore. I think it's Singapore. Anyway, then you've got our European NATO partners. You have Australia. All Hawaii gets trade. Trade comes to western shores and eastern shores.
It's like Panama is so important to everybody. It's because that's a trading route. Is Panama as well as her roots.
You go around the south part of Africa, going between the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic, or going between the Atlantic and the Pacific near Australia. Those are stress points where the United States is willing to go to war with anybody at any time over freedom of navigation, not just for U.S. ships, but for all international shipping.
Yeah, and we'll get to a lot of the military stuff.
Go around the Horn. If Iranians want to go around the Horn, and South Africans tell Iranians they can't go around the Horn, U.S. servicemen are willing to die to ensure that South Africans cannot stop Iranians from going around the Horn.
That's right.
That's international shipping. It's an absolute. It's not like an abstract thing. And Iran is impinging on the Strait of Hormuz, where a third of the world's oil transits, or maybe even more. And so when things go bad, Bahrain calls, Kuwait calls, Iraq calls, Saudi, all of them call and say, hey, we need help because our what do they call those super oil tankers? Anyway, can't transit the strait because Iran's acting like pirates. It's basically national piracy is what they're engaging in.
Yeah.
And the United States is willing to go to war with pirates. It's the reason that Marines were created in the first place. And they went in, there's terrible piracy in the Mediterranean when Marines were first founded, and the Marines stomped right into Tripoli and ended piracy out of, I forget, Libya. So that was our first incursion over piracy. We've been involved in stopping piracy ever since, except for when we were at war with each other, like England and States. They would do piracy on each other.
Susan kind of threw into the chat room. Garfield neighborhood, suspect killed after 6-hour standoff. So I knew that was coming. Right. I knew that was coming. He was shooting at the police. So now China, we've been bringing up China in the last, last 10 minutes or so. China's pushing to hate America to the country. That we are Nazis. It almost sounds like rhetoric from Putin. I don't know if you heard the speech, but it's saying that we're bad, our economy's bad, and we're taking stuff away from the citizens, and for Jinping to complain about this and to hate America over it, it's just odd. It's just really odd.
It just means that we're in a state of war with them.
Yeah.
When you when you when you start verbally attacking your neighbor, you have entered into a state of war just short of sticks and stones. Okay, you're in the war of the pen.
They had a Chinese submarine that crashed into Taiwan Strait. Now, it's really hard because China said there's no submarine in the strait. Taiwan claims it is, but it didn't really, well, it crashed kind of, sort of. And see, I found this unusual, even though, it's unconfirmed, but the reports have suggested Chinese nuclear submarine has crashed in the Taiwan Strait.
So we've crashed before with Russian submarines. I don't know if you guys know that. The United States have in the past. So submarines who are running silent, it's almost impossible to be heard, especially if they're near a thermal plane. It's a boundary layer where sound doesn't transmit through water. It acts like a mirror for sound. And sonar is how submarines are guided. And when they're running silent, they're not pinging with sonar. They're just listening to ambient sounds out around them and other people's sonar, right? And occasionally they run head on and run into the side of each other because there's no windows in a submarine. And if they're both running silent to get, in a proximate area, we've had collisions before. It's not a surprise.
And 4 Pacific Island leaders arrive in Vanuatu for claiming a political crisis of what's being done to them by China. And they said weather-wise. Now, the only thing I could think of is they're starting to complain of either solar flares or an EMP. And so Taiwan.
So they know that there's weather modification, and if their countries are taking damage, even if it's not because of weather warfare between the United States and China, right? Or China and Australia, whatever, they're going to go ahead and say that this weather warfare has caused our country's damage and you should pay us.
Yeah.
They're just getting, it's the international equivalent of being sued.
Okay.
If you're in an auto accident and the other is at fault or maybe at fault or partially at fault, then there's a trial. That's what's going on right now.
Yeah. So, let's see. Doug McGregor. You were telling me a lot on Doug McGregor, and I didn't get to see the report, so I'm going to go ahead and unleash on that one with McGregor, what he says about Ukraine.
Colonel McGregor came out today and said that the northern part, or not the northern part, that Ukraine is near collapse. He stated there they have 400,000 KIA now. They have over 50,000 amputees. Now, when you have killed in action, that's only a percentage of your military, okay, typically. But the wounded are going to be a lot greater in number. So if you got 400,000 killed, you might have 800,000 injured. 800,000 that have got the equivalent in the United States of a Purple Heart.
Yeah. And
So
the other thing I'm hearing
they're
though,
going to
William,
collapse.
is Europe is sending them some of the F-16s over, but a lot of the rest of it's 50-50 on whether they should even be sending F-16s at this point.
So here's the thing with the F-16s. During the Gulf War, F-16s, if they knew what was assaulting them, okay? Now, this is not ground weapons that they can't see. But if they knew who was assaulting them, they could fight their way in, do their bombing, and fight their way out. Okay, that's what F-16s were developed for. They move at the speed of light. That's why we created them. And they can dogfight. Very good dogfighters.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. This isn't 1990 anymore. This is 2003. And the air-to-air weapon systems are completely different. It's like going to a different planet. So are these F-16s going to be a big deal? Probably not without having air-to-air interdiction.
Yeah.
Not without having weasels in knocking out SAM sites, not without satellites. You have to have everything. You have to have a complete Air Force and a complete Navy to attack one of these areas effectively. And it's not enough for Ukraine. It would take the entire panoply of NATO's capacity to take on Russia. Now, NATO doesn't want that. It's likely that if there's not a peace treaty pretty soon, Russia's going to push towards the Dnipro River, which is a defensible line that the Ukrainian army can probably hold them at for a little while. But if they decide to go beyond that, Ukraine could disappear.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Putin's already Putin
Russia would be Russia be on Poland's border, and Macedonia and Romania's border. So, and our troops are there. So it's a dangerous situation. This could escalate into World War III very quickly.
Now we know that.
Remember, when all these partners go to war, right?
Yeah.
Russia and NATO, if they were to go to war head to head, China would jump in.
Yeah.
Okay. So then there would be war in the South China Sea as well.
Right.
And all these flashpoints around the world, like I forget, Armenia against Iran, or not Iran, but I think it was one of the stands.
They're going after their own neighbors,
there's going to be
their own allies.
That happen all over the world that way.
And now, not only is it they're doing that, but then when we look at the Middle East, we're looking at taking sides, and they're now whether it's you're affiliated to any mercenary group, that you have to take that stand, but you can't stay in the country of Iraq. And we're starting to see that more and more with even Saudi and Arabia culture in different places around the globe. I mean, even up
Saudi
in
Arabia has always been very anti-foreigner.
And so
when you go there to do business, you stay in their hotels, and then you leave. You don't. You don't
necessarily know it is an American hotel.
Sure. We have people who own hotels all over the world. That's not the problem. It's just the culture is tolerant or it's not tolerant. In Dubai, people are free to move around, but at the time of prayer, right, 5 times a day, even the Christians stop. They pray to their God, and Islamic people pray to their God.
Yep.
You
That's the problem, though.
You have to live with the culture you land in.
That's the problem that we're having in each of the cultures, because they each have their own gods. I want to say per se, but like the Shiites and I can't remember the other ones.
The Sunnis and the Shiites.
Sunnis, right? They have been fighting over a god for thousands of years.
They believe in the same God, but they don't believe in the same number of living leaders. So there's 12 in one group, and there's 3 in the other group of their leaders, right?
And
they've been fighting since Muhammad.
Yeah.
The death of Muhammad, the family split into 2 groups, Shiites and Sunnis. They've been fighting ever since.
Now I want to move on to now India was the first to get to the southern part of the moon. I mentioned on the last show, but I really wanted to touch into India's growth over the last decade. And me and you talked about this with that, they had work visas, they had they did land. They were the first to land on the southern part of the moon. But when we look at the economy of India since even the Clinton administration, and then Hillary was going over there a lot when she was in the State Department, and then
as well as Canada. Canada was going there too.
And there was dozens of agreements that were made for the Democrats with India, and now they're booming, and now they've been to the south side of the moon. It was a race to see who could get there first between Russia and Israel. William, do you got? Oh, and then,
no. It was Russia and I'm sorry. There's a race between Russia and India, not the other.
Yeah. So.
Not Israel. Now Japan's also got a space program, and so does the European Union, but they're not in the race to the moon. This has always been a prestige thing for Russia and for India. Now, India's got a third of the world's population, and Russia has arguably the second most powerful military on the planet. So, anyway, the two of them are in a race of prestige, and the Soviet aircraft has crashed on the moon. They had one during the Apollo days that crashed as well. The same time that Neil Armstrong was taking his first steps on the moon. If they died, if Neil Armstrong failed, right, didn't get off the moon, didn't get on the moon, then they would have had their robot on the moon. Mm-hmm. They would have had a great success. The United States had a terrible failure. It worked out the other way around, and they had a crashed robot basically on the moon. Now they've got another crashed lander because they're competing with India. And there's other competitions going on around the world. We have satellites being put up by Japan and China and the EU. And, I'm not sure, but I think Brazil even has a program now.
Yeah.
All you have to do is have a craft capable of reaching 100 miles up and moving at 17,000 miles an hour. Then that's the speed at which you break free of the Earth's gravitational pull, and you can move out into space. But you have to be able to transit that 100 miles and achieve 17,000 miles an hour.
Mhm.
And once you have a craft that can do that, you can go to the moon, you can go to Mars, you can go to the sun, you can go wherever you want.
Yeah.
Whether you're successful or not, well, that's a different deal. But once you can get out of Earth's atmosphere, and once you can do that, you can assault anybody else on the planet. You can reach anybody on the planet, because once you get at 17,000 miles an hour
Yeah.
and 100 miles up, you can coast to any other country. So you put a weapon, you put a satellite,
Yep.
you put a spacecraft goes out and exploring. You do whatever you think you need to do. So it's a big deal to get off the ground and make that 100 miles up and the 17,000 mile an hour velocity.
And moving to Ukraine, and that is we did a little bit on Ukraine at the beginning of the show, but now Ukraine is for some reason not wanting to let his personal life go. Everybody says, "Oh no, it's about how the Clintons deceived and did agreements, lots of agreements that changed how we looked at terrorism with the Clintons." And then so now we move on, and what we're seeing is um,
Go ahead.
I'm a loss here for
Okay, so during the Clintons, they had the Oklahoma bombing, and
right.
That was an internal struggle between that was American upon American, right? And then during Obama, they decided that they didn't want to, and because
right.
the Cold War was over, and they were going to have trade with China and trade with Russia, and so this great thing, they decided to move away from heavy armies, land armies like we need right now.
Yeah.
And move towards interdiction of terrorists, which is special forces.
Right.
Which is use spies for that sort of thing, and special forces.
Well,
so
speaking of spies,
special forces.
China has caught some of our spies over there and claiming we're sending spies there, not only to Ukraine, but they're sending spies into, they claim the CIA is doing it to Putin and us. And
let's be honest.
China. Yeah.
The FSB out of Russia, the CCP's intelligence, and the CIA from the United States, and Mossad from Israel, and MI6 from Great Britain.
Yep.
You get the idea.
And I only mentioned MI6 because they keep, they are getting bigger, and they're into more than they did a year ago.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they gather intelligence all over the world, and they culture spies, right? They recruit all over the world, and it's just what spies do. So these two guys were grabbed up, were actually party members, all right? But they got recruited by the CIA, and they got trapped.
Yeah.
It's just what happens. That's just life in the big world.
Yeah.
Because superpowers have to know what's going on the ground everywhere. We need to know what's going to happen before it happens, not after it happens. We need to be proactive, not reactive. Because once you get reactive, you can end up with a war you can't live with.
Well, and that you say reactive because we were talking about Israel earlier, how Israel had moved into Gaza, and they were taking it. And then my thing was they were being very active, and active could in the eyes of Iran and Hezbollah and others is aggression.
So they went into the West Bank, and they went in hunting for sympathizers of Iran, the people that are coming from Iran that are instigating problems with the Palestinians. They're using Palestinians as proxies. Okay,
Yep.
so Israel has gone into the West Bank, basically on the ground, not by air, but on the ground, hunting these guys, right? So that they're not instigating terror against Israel, and it's only 10% or less of the population, or even 10% of Hezbollah. That Hezbollah, probably 10% of them are involved with the Iranians. So that's who they're after, and they'll find them.
Yeah.
The Mossad is very good at finding people like that.
And it's so.
When they travel into the West Bank, they already know who they're hunting for.
Yeah, and the thing
but
with
they're going after individuals, not a group. They're just going after individuals.
Right, and the thing, what we're seeing is, I mean, we've already been from Ukraine to Taiwan, China, and now Israel, and every single one of them, there is a line drawn in the sand for war. And
so there's
who strikes
points
first
all over the world that we know about. There's the North and South Korean border. There's the border between Pakistan and India. That's a real dangerous one because both sides have nuclear weapons. In Africa, there's the Houthis and Hutus. But those are different tribes.
Well, Boko Haram. I was telling Karen about Boko Haram that are now showing up in New York, and they're cannibals. They are in fact cannibals. Yes, and they eat who they kill. Yes, and and they also do the sacrificial rituals, like some of these others. And no, they didn't have the cartel doing that until Boko Haram went through Mexico a couple of years ago. Because I was looking into it where the cartel was, or where ISIS was.
So these are ancient cultures that are reemerging. They've always been there. They've just been in the background, right? Because they've been pushed down by Western society. So they have been practicing. Well, now they're practicing out in the open. These ancient cultures are coming to the fore. They're just pagan culture, and it's what they do when they go to war. And Boko Haram, once they take control of you, they'll eat you if you're a combatant against them. It's just what they do. They use it as a way of terrorizing the population to demand control.
Yeah.
Regardless of what other people think. And yes, they are cannibals. But it shouldn't be shocking that there are cannibals out there in the world. Our military's had to deal with them a long time. There was a time when we had to worry about landing on New Guinea because of the cannibal tribes there. So when our pilots get shot down into New Guinea, there's a good chance if they didn't land in the specific area on the top of the mountain where we had an airstrip, they were lunch.
And that's it.
The sky. Cannibalism's been practiced by the human species from almost its inception. And people haven't been taught all the history. They've been taught about the history, but they haven't gone in depth.
They're not proud of their heritage.
That's some of humans' war actions, is cannibalism. And we haven't gone into things like sexuality, like infabulation, where they take away the women's ability to have joy. Or there's 1,000 things that go on that we don't get taught about, but are happening. The U.S. military understands it, and we keep it away from the American public.
Yeah.
But these things aren't an aberration, is what I'm trying to say. This is how certain groups in the world act and react.
Yeah. Heck, we're almost done with all this stuff. Um, Now we talked about Belarus a little bit, but they were caught. Uh, this is out of Kiev, being caught moving nuclears into Belarus. Now we already mentioned this, so no, not.
So Russia's moved some weapons into Belarus because they're angry that the United States and NATO
Mexico.
have piled on and put troops on the Polish border
Yeah.
next to Belarus.
Yeah.
And because we've been sending weapons to Ukraine. So
Yeah.
that's a natural progression of war, okay? Defending your lines of control. Borders are lines of control. Sometimes rivers are lines of control. Anyway, protecting your border, depending on which side you're on. This is a natural behavior. Now, if you go into war incrementally, just a little step by a little step, you can expect war to spread out, and it'll continue spreading out. There's no way to contain it. You know, when we went into South Vietnam and ended up going to war with North Vietnam,
yeah,
we ended up in Laos, we ended up in Cambodia.
Yep.
It spreads out, okay? So Johnson sent us to war, and it spread out. Well, President Biden sent us to war, and this thing's going to spread out because it's been incrementally gone into. Now, if they violated what's called the Powell Doctrine. Powell Doctrine was developed after Vietnam and Korea because the military decided that was a failure. So Colin Powell, regardless of his politics, okay, came up with a doctrine of only going to war with all your weapons.
That's right.
By going for complete total dominance and knowing what your objectives are before you leave. Okay?
And it, so you know, and William, you
go there, you do your action, and then you leave. You don't stay.
You put Ukraine out there, and what you just said, they didn't do none of the above, and then they wonder why they're losing the war.
We went into Desert Storm to liberate Kuwait. We used the Powell Doctrine. So we were very successful.
Yeah.
But it's the only place the United States has used the Powell Doctrine in the last, 80 years.
And this administration is going to go down for a war of no reason. I can't remember who. I think Dan Bongino may have said it. But the Ukraine war will be a war of no reason because we had no reason to start a war with Russia at this point.
So there's a plague on a number of nations. Okay, we're just going to call it a plague of reasoning. There's a plague on the United States. There's a plague in Russia. There's a plague in Ukraine. And there's certain people that are fomenting war. And they're not peacemakers. And eventually they'll export war until it ends up with civil war in their own society.
Yeah.
Because they're warmongers. There is no peace for them. They only recognize force. So there's a group like that here in the United States. There's groups like that all around the world. And there's also groups that believe in peace, all right?
Yeah.
At almost any cost. And those two forces balance each other in every country. Remember, I told you there's always two sides, and then there's probably, that fifth column out there that you don't take account for that's quiet.
Yeah.
So we're going to live through that. Now, Nigel Farage in England says the United States is near civil war.
Well, I've talked about that on the show. I want to touch on a little bit because this country split 50-50. period. No matter what we tried, no matter what elections we have, it's always 50-50, 50-50. Now, we are looking at either a civil war or asking the Democrats to leave and come up with their own country.
So if there's not a peaceful transfer of power and honest elections, okay, in 2024, bad things could happen. And that's my fear, is that some of these things are leading the United States towards civil war. It's not just the United States, though.
Oh no, it just about everywhere.
Russia. That's what happened with Wagner and Moscow. And
even in well, not just our country, but even Canada and even the places in NATO, the states that Soros foundations are loose. Oh boy, did I lose you?
Well, once these civil wars happen in superpower nations, these foundations will be hunted and killed. I don't know if these foundations know that.
Oh yeah, and I think that's why Biden didn't go ahead and do a foundation, is because
that's just part of international warfare.
Yeah, because well, not only that, but they're finding other countries can freeze their accounts. If they're doing business in another country, if let's say Hillary Clinton's doing business in Pakistan and they find something she did that offended them, they can freeze their accounts in Pakistan and empty out that account. So now the foundations aren't so popular like they used to be.
Yeah, well, these public-private partnerships, okay, the Nazis were a public-private partnership. That's what Nazism is controlled commerce and a controlled military. So that's what Nazism, and you can still have your religion, okay, in Nazism, but everything else is controlled by the state. And then if you go to communism, then the state not only controls everything and owns everything, but it becomes your God. So you can either worship the leader of a communist country, all right, like Kim Jong-un, all right, that's the leader that is worshipped. He's not just the leader, he's worshipped like a god. And that's the same thing that will happen with China. If China is able to destroy the United States, that's what will be demanded here.
And
that's why William hates communism. I don't hate individuals. I hate ideas. And Nazism and communism, they'll get together in frenemies, okay, to fight democracies and republics. Okay, communism, and then when those people are out of the way, the communists and the Nazis will fight each other, which is happening in Ukraine right now.
Yeah, well, Putin's always said the Western Nazis, and a lot of people don't realize in history that when World War II went, that the the SS soldiers fled to Ukraine and started setting up. So what we're seeing in
Russia, and Russia lost 1 million people before they were able to start pushing the Nazis out of their country.
Right.
They were attacked by Nazis. They have a history of being attacked by the Prussians and the Germans, okay? And this is just ancient history, guys. And anytime power builds up on the continent, there's usually a squabble. Remember the charge of the Light Brigade?
Yeah.
Well, that was the British going against the Russians. And they consider the British as allies of Nazis, right? So this has just been happening forever.
Yeah.
Europe has
Decades.
never wanted wanted to accept Russia in as one of the group of nations in Russia,
even though
because
they're both
they didn't believe they were civilized enough.
right.
And
Well, they were accusing
Russia
them of
said,
hardcore communists, and then after Gorbachev and Putin took over power, he pretty much was leaning towards socialism. So they were almost equivalent, but they
were able to have their religions, which
right.
happens to be the Ukrainian Orthodox and Russian Orthodox. Okay, that's a Christianity.
And pretty much, I think they were they needed Putin to become really hardcore liberals, and he didn't want to join the whole group thing. He wanted to run his country on its own. I think he first saw Klaus Schwab with the World Economics fix and take over, to be honest.
Putin rose to power to control the oligarchs. The oligarchs have all the money in Russia. It's just a few people. They're like the Bezoses and the Gates and the guy that builds all these cars, electric cars. I forget his name.
Elon Musk.
Twitter. Yeah. So these are oligarchs. Okay. They're what we call oligarchs in Russia. Well, they're just Russia would call them oligarchs in the United States. So these people have always existed, but they need to be monitored. They need to have some controls and some rules put on them so that they don't hurt the societies that they're working in. And Putin has always tried to defend the Russian nation. He's always been a super patriot. Okay, whatever you want to call him, evil. Sure, there's the evil Putin, but he's always been a super patriot for Russia. He was born in Russia. He loves Russia. He loves the people of Russia. He loves the culture of Russia, and he'll defend it to the death.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing going on his border.
Well, because we're kind of waiting to see.
Border, it would be the same.
We're kind of waiting to, like, the title of the show is "Who's Going to Strike First?" Will it be Iran at Hormuz? Will it be China and Taiwan with the submarine that did it crash or did it not? And China says
you don't find out about that stuff for about 6 or 7 years.
That's it.
Those are always highly compartmentalized.
We're just now finding out
black
stuff
operations.
with
nobody ever hears about them until a long time after.
Yeah, we're still finding out stuff with Vietnam, and the big thing that of history, William, is something that really irks me is Joe Biden is fixing to let the 9/11 terrorists out of prison, the ones that orchestrated and a big part of bringing the planes in and having them crash into the World Towers. He's going to let them out.
So Biden is a different president. Okay, he's not. We know he's not like Trump, and we know he's not even like Barack Obama. He's a different president. In the past, the United States would not deal with terrorists, period. Yeah. It was a rule. You don't negotiate with terrorists ever. Biden doesn't have that problem. He's happy to negotiate with anybody.
Does he really negotiate, though? Does he really negotiate, or does he just assume he's king and everybody will follow?
Well, he doesn't understand how international power functions. And he believes that words are mightier than the sword. Okay, words will trump the sword every time. And words can not only defend you, but make you president, I'm not even going to go say his name, right? He believed the sword is mightiest.
Yeah.
And because of that, world peace ensued. This president doesn't believe that, and so wars will break out in every flashpoint around the world. And there's almost a flashpoint in every country. There's always some tribe, some group, some gripe.
Yeah.
That they blame each other and they're willing to kill over. And as soon as the superpowers of the world become weaker or involved with each other or lose their attention, all these countries will break out in war. It's not if, it's just when.
Yeah.
And that's just global power dynamics. And this president, this administration does not understand that. Janet Yellen doesn't understand that. Hillary, she doesn't understand that. Kerry, Mayorkas, Sullivan, Victoria Nuland, Christopher Wray, Merrick Garland, David Weiss, Fannie Willis, Alvin Bragg, Anthony Blinken, none of them understand global power dynamics.
Nope. Because they've never done foreign policy.
They understand diplomacy, but they don't understand how militaries and governmental power structures are forced to engage with each other.
Yeah.
Either by subterfuge or externally. And when you get externally, that just means military conflict.
Yeah.
We always have spies going on. That's war.
Yeah.
That's a warfare.
Because China found the spies over there, and it's a bad thing. They got their own spies over here. Everybody uses
just
them.
Warfare by other means.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
And you have plausible deniability, so it doesn't escalate into armed conflict. But armed conflict is inevitable if superpowers become weaker. And that's weird to think about, right?
Yeah, it is.
You have to have a powerful killing force to make sure that all the other people on the planet don't start slaughtering each other.
But they're on the verge of it because there's so many wars.
Well, Biden is allowed now with this Ukrainian war.
And they're not talking,
right?
And the big thing, William, is nobody's talking. Yeah, they may go to the Davos and G summits and all that, but they're not telling the United States, you guys are weaker, and it's starting to hurt the rest of us. No one is brave enough.
Nobody wants to say the emperor has no clothes.
That's right.
And the reason certain candidates are being attacked is because they said the emperor has no clothes. This isn't like a surprise of why this is all occurring at the same time.
Yeah. So
this has always been happening. Because of the information age, we become exposed to it and basically terrorized by it. The internet's not only good for information with good things, but it terrorizes you in other ways because you have information now that only leaders had in the past, only kings and queens had in the past. And so they were able to control their countries. Well, now it's everybody. Everybody that can get on the internet, the international internet. It's a war of ideas by other means, transmitted instantly around the world at the speed of light.
Yeah.
That's what we're engaging in.
Yeah.
But some of us believe in peace, and peace comes through understanding these power dynamics and ensuring that these superpowers are in a place to not only protect themselves, but also to stop all these smaller conflagrations that could go on around the world and, slaughter millions. So it's not bad to have Russia and the United States a superpower, because when we're facing each other, nobody dares breathe, right?
Yeah.
That's what the Cold War was.
Yeah.
And for the most part, there weren't too many conflicts going on around the world that threatened the entire planet.
Yeah.
We wouldn't allow that. Neither would Russia, right? Because it's no good for either one of us. So when people finally understand that you have to have a standing military that nobody wants to engage in, because the carnage would be so terrific, it would be unbearable by the nation, okay? And that's what superpowers are, is they're able to have militaries that everybody else on the planet does not want to engage in.
Yeah.
Now, the United States doesn't want to engage directly with Russia.
No.
Right?
Because
they're
neither does China.
Right? No, they're a superpower, and it would just be unholy carnage. All right. I'm U.S. military, right? I love the U.S. military. I love the United States. I love the flag. I love the Constitution. All right. I love the Bible, and I pack iron. It's just that's William.
Mm-hmm.
But there's the same group of people in Russia, and because they're there, I have to respect them as a U.S. military person. I respect the Russian fighting soldier because I've seen what he can do in the past. I saw what he did to the Nazis. So even though I despise Putin, I still have to laud the fact that he allows Christianity to go on in his country, that he allows commerce to go on in his country, and that he loves the geography he's in, just like the United States does, and that they have their own culture, and they don't want the Western culture. They don't want to be told what to do.
I don't think any country does. It's on their own. Just like Mexico.
No,
Mexico's going to do what they do.
Capable of being a superpower.
Just like Taiwan doesn't want China in their business, and I think it goes for every country around this globe, that everybody, it just wants to have their own politics and military or not military, but don't come in and change our laws. And that's, I think, why it's brought us to the brink of war 3 ways, with Israel, Iran, and war with Russia. And then we're seeing Taiwan.
We've got regional powers blowing up, like Iran. We have India is becoming a regional power, right, in the Indian Ocean. We're going to see these other powers grow in stature through technology, through development of their resources, through manufacturing. Once they become a military force, then they'll be either defensive or they'll be expeditionary. And Iran's tendency is expeditionary. Okay, now India's tendency is not expeditionary.
Yeah.
China's tendency is expeditionary. They've always tried to go into Cambodia. They've always tried to go into Vietnam, for thousands of years. All right, so they're expeditionary. There are certain cultures that are expeditionary, and the United States was one of them.
Yeah.
we're reluctantly expeditionary because we wanted the rest of the world to just leave us alone. We were over here on the North American continent, us and Canada, just leave us alone. You can have your World War, right? We'll sell you stuff if you want to buy it and send us gold. That's fine. We're okay with that. But we don't want to take a side. But the other countries decided they were going to include us in war. And our reluctant peaceful democracy had to become an expeditionary military force for the world.
Yeah.
We had to become the referee for this world war. And we've been a reluctant referee around the world ever since. And we're a superpower. And because we're a superpower, all these smaller countries hate us. Even though we've refereed and saved their lives, and their children have been born because of us, because of our goodwill, we don't stay in countries, demand to stay in countries, right?
I think that's what they're doing with the migrants.
Leave your country back to you. We didn't take over all of Germany. We have a couple military.
Well, China do it after they get thousands in.
Yeah, we would keep our little lily pads around the world, but we let the world govern itself. But there's other expeditionary forces that are completely opposite. They want to colonize and completely dominate. And China happens to be one of them. And Russia has been in the past communist. But right now, we don't know. We don't know if Russia wants to go. I don't know what his system is other than it's a semi-democratic, because they do have leaders of their counties and their cities that are voted upon by the people, right? And they do have a financial system that functions, and they do all the things a nation can do, and they're a superpower. But whether they're expeditionary or not, I'm not sure at this point. They have been in the past, but only after they were attacked. Like the United States, they're to a degree a reluctant superpower.
Oh yeah. So, anyway, William, you got any final thoughts?
I think this thing where U.S. citizens and citizens of the European Union have been told to get out of Belarus is a very dark harbinger of what may be coming. And that notification tells us that this war could spread. Going on in Ukraine. And even though it's consumed 1 million bodies already, it may consume 10 million more or 100 million more.
Yeah. And it could,
and
we could have 3 wars in one, to where we're going to look weak again.
If Putin or the EU or the United States doesn't bring it to an end, it's going to fester and grow, and it's going to consume all of us.
Okay, well, that is it for tonight, folks. Come on back tomorrow for Thursday and news and world news. If not, come watch our weather and lifestyle news. William, great show and a lot of information from you. And
sorry about the doom and gloom part.
I don't think it's doom and gloom. I think it's a warning for everybody to be prepared.
You don't recognize that you can't bring it to a stop, right? You can't speak against what's going on. The slaughter of human lives that are going on in Ukraine.
But all right. So we'll see you on. All right.